Okay, let's run.
Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, Season 1 for Diablo 3 has dropped, and while I still feel the need to say there's a lot less hype for this than there was 3 days ago, there still are a good chunk of us willing to put up with it at least until the developer stream to see what they have to say about everything, and in the meantime, we will enjoy the game how it is for the moment and try not to feel despondent about these changes. That said, the first hurdle, the big objective for Season 1, is going to be leveling a new character as quickly as possible, mostly with the goal of reaching World Tier 4, as that is really where the game opens up. It's when your legendaries, uniques, and malignant hearts all can actually properly drop, so you can actually craft the build that you want to work with at that point. So of course, let's dive into the best way to level now that Season 1 is actually out. We know all of the changes, we've had a bit of experience with Malignant Tunnels to see how they compare to other things, and we've done our testing. Before we dive in, this is going to be a bit of a simpler guide. I have 10 steps to get you all the way past level 70, very little travel, not an extensive amount of thought required, but if you really want to push this as hard as possible, we have a leveling guide from a few days ago that shows a speedrun quality route that should get you to high level at minimum 10% faster. It just requires following a much more specific route to achieve it. So if you prefer that, it exists, you can still look at it, but this is going to be something a bit simpler to follow. That said, first things first, you want to play on World Tier 2. At least try World Tier 2, okay? With the fact that we start this season with 5 bonus skill points and a whole whack of bonus stats on our characters thanks to Altars of Lilith carrying over, we are simply stronger in early game than we were in the base game of Diablo 4, and that makes the 20% bonus XP of World Tier 2 actually approachable. If you find yourself struggling or progressing slowly in World Tier 2, swap back to Tier 1. It's not worth it if that's happening. It's not a massive deal, but it is just faster in Tier 2 if you can push yourself. Past that, I am also going to assume that everyone watching this wants to engage with the Season 1 mechanics, and so the first thing that I'm going to recommend is completing as much of the seasonal questline as you can before it walls your progress. It starts from right where you spawn in Kyovashad when you skip campaign, and it doesn't take too long to do the first bits which unlock the whole Malignant Heart system. After that, you don't really need to focus on doing this speedily for a while, as the actual rewards from the questline are locked behind Season Journey, which is partially locked behind character level as well, so you really want to focus level until you at least get to around 45, at which point you can think about the questline again if you want to, but you don't need to yet either. Do any events that you passed while doing the questline itself, of course. Events in the open world are really good XP if you don't have to do any waiting. Aside from that, there are 3 main activities that you will be doing to level up in Season 1 depending on what stage of the journey you're at and what your immediate goals are. The fastest way to level up in a single way is actually Malignant Tunnels. One specific one in particular. They created the layout of these Malignant Tunnels with all the feedback that they got from us around the original beta dungeons because these were all made after that. So they purposefully made them relatively short, minimal backtracking, and relatively good mob density as well, all of which happens to make a pretty efficient XP farm when you add in the guaranteed elite spawns because of the type of activity that it is, and then you want to ignore the extra rooms and pathways with the Invoker event if you are after pure speed. Just get to the point where Tunnel Complete pops up above you, exit dungeon, and use the map to reset dungeons and walk back in, easy peasy. I tested all of these Malignant Tunnels pretty rigorously once I started to have some actual killing power in my build to make it consistent, and not only can I tell you the best one of them to do, I can give you the full order in case you want to swap it up sometimes and have some variety while still being efficient. Number 1 by far is Dindai Hollow in the Dry Steppes. This place has a slay all enemies objective which is solid, it has a decent elite spawn rate, and when you complete the slay all enemies objective, it actually spawns the end objective elite boss right on top of your head, so there is 0 travel time required to a boss room of any kind, and that is just absolutely perfect for farming efficiency. A note here, if you want exclusively experience, then you should ignore Malignant Heart Elite respawning as well, as the spawn timer after clicking on the heart is obnoxiously long and it slows you down overall, but as a long-term investment, I heavily recommend doing all of them anyways. Picking up hearts means being able to salvage hearts, which means getting a ton of the crafting materials, the ichor, as you level up, that you can use for later game builds. It's all important stuff, and so slowing yourself down a little bit early on in the early game to double up and get a lot of these materials you will want later on is more than worth it if you are already doing the activity anyways. In any case, Dindai Hollow was giving me 57,000 experience for a 4-minute completion time, which is a whopping 855,000 experience per hour, which is extremely good early game, better than any normal dungeon by a pretty decent margin, especially when you consider I was stopping to do the Malignant Heart spawns, which undoubtedly does slow down the leveling speed a bit. Next up is the Ravening Pit in the Dry Steppes. I got 45,000 experience in 3 minutes and 48 seconds as an average completion time, which is 710,000 experience per hour. Still extremely good. It's not quite the best though, obviously. Third is Bedeviled Grotto in Hawazar, 48,000 experience in 4 minutes and 5 seconds on average for a total of 705,000 experience per hour, just slightly behind the Ravening Pit. Then past that it gets much worse with the other 3. So those are the 3 that I recommend doing for experience farm purposes without a doubt. Boiling Wound in Fracturing Peaks averaged about 574,000 experience per hour, Den of the Blighted in Hawazar averaged out 534,000 experience per hour, and Fissure of Malice averaged out at about 520,000 per hour. Not bad numbers by any means, those are still pretty decent, but compared to the 855,000 of Dindai Hollow, it is pretty incomparable when it comes to which of them is the best. Aside from that, another really solid leveling method is to just follow around dungeons that are marked by the Tree of Whispers, complete them, then hand it in at the tree itself. This is slower than farming the best XP dungeon over and over, which in itself is still slower than farming the best Malignant Tunnel, as I've now found out, but it also gets you crafting materials. It can get you entire elixirs, it gets you renown as you're bouncing around the map completing new dungeons back to back, and it gets you bonus gear from the tree hand in as well. All of that is genuinely valuable. It is slower for pure leveling speed, but if you want those things in particular, it is still a super solid leveling method. I would call it about 20% slower than just spamming the top Malignant Tunnel, which isn't crazy worse given the other benefits that it has. Past that, we have my actually really big useful trick, the fastest XP gain per hour in very specific scenarios, but very useful scenarios. Stronghold resetting. Yes, I know I'm not the first person to mention resetting strongholds, but I'm not done. Listen to my specific wisdom here. Farm the Dindai Hollow Malignant Tunnel until you reach a point capable of completing the first capstone dungeon to unlock World Tier 3. I managed to do so at level 38, which is pretty damn early. At this point, you gain access to World Tier 3 itself, but every single overworld enemy on the World Tier, every dungeon enemy, all of them are scaled to level 55 at minimum, which is incredibly tricky to actually kill if you get here too early, and that is slower than farming on World Tier 2, even though World Tier 3 has a massive innate 100% experience gain bonus. That said, strongholds are the key here. Strongholds, for whatever reason, ignore overworld level scaling because they are their own little microclimate of enemies. If you do a stronghold in World Tier 3 and you are level 40, the enemies will be level 42 maximum, which is 13 levels lower than anything else in World Tier 3 at that point. The big deal here though is that they still give the 100% bonus XP because you are still completing the activity on World Tier 3, even though the enemies inside are essentially the exact same difficulty as they would be on World Tier 2. On top of this, you can farm strongholds on repeat if you just don't complete the final objective, log back out, log back in, and then it is fully reset to the beginning of that stronghold. The best one realistically for this is actually Onyx Watchtower. Doing that at around level 40 on World Tier 3 gave me consistently around 78,500 experience in a 3-minute and 50-second completion time. That averages out at about 1.23 million experience per hour, 50% higher than doing Dindai Hollow on World Tier 2 at the exact same level with the exact same build. That is a stupidly large increase, and on top of that, Onyx Watchtower has a really good item drop rate compared to other strongholds, and so once you are able to have Sacreds drop for you, you can start piling those up too by killing enemies that are under level 55. I haven't had any drop for me specifically yet at level 43, especially as the enemies in here scale based on your level, but you should have Sacred start dropping far before the enemies in here hit level 55, which is what puts them on par with other enemies in the World Tier, so you can get them easier than anywhere else in this World Tier. So basically, just farm strongholds. Onyx Watchtower resets are ideal for pure XP to time ratio. Otherwise, another option is just completing various strongholds that are around the map. This also doubles up as renown farm, as you'll need to farm renown at some point either way. This gets you some variety as well. It will wind up being anywhere from 15 to 20% slower experience in the strongholds themselves, but also there will be a ton of travel time to slow it down further going from one stronghold to the next, but it lets you double up activities, so consider your goals and make that choice for yourself. Either way, once you get the capstone done, if you get it done early, the ideal way forward is to just do strongholds in some manner until you hit a power point capable of starting nightmare dungeons. At that point, nightmare dungeons are just the king. Always do nightmare dungeons when you are farming XP if you are strong enough to do them as far as that goes, and also gear is really good in them too, especially now because they buffed the gear that drops within nightmare dungeons in the recent patch. The same thing with these strongholds applies to World Tier 4 as well. It's worth mentioning you can unlock World Tier 4 at level 60 or even lower if you have a really good build going. Then you can just do the exact same thing. Sit in World Tier 4 for the massive experience bonus, go to a stronghold for reasonably easy enemies compared to the level 75 overworld while still getting the experience bonus. Profit from this massive experience gain, and Ancestrals will also start dropping in these eventually too. That's pretty much it then, everyone. A couple of extremely strong experience farm methods for pre-level 50, and my incredibly strong trick for leveling quickly if you unlock a new world tier but aren't quite strong enough for nightmare dungeons within that tier yet. Strongholds are silly good with that caveat if you focus on them at this specific time period. Make sure to make use of them while you can. Not to mention they will be earlier sources of sacred and ancestral gear than the overworld, at least comparing how early that you can safely farm them compared to said overworld. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown, and I hope this helps you out on your leveling journey in Season 1. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.